All right, so today we got a 2019 Chevrolet Silverado 1500. Guy put a lift kit on, did it wrong, didn't put something in right, and you can see his tires right here. They're worn out pretty bad. He wants me to do the ball joints and the upper control arm bushings. So I'm gonna take this apart and kind of walk you guys through the whole process of pulling everything out, switching over the bushings, doing your ball joints, and putting it back together. So I'm gonna get the camera set up and we'll get going. Also, I kind of think this guy put this on and did not tighten these bolts right, because that's bad. It might not even be the bushings. It might just be that this is loose. I mean, I'm sure the bushings are damaged, but the whole thing is moving. It's crazy. Absolutely nuts. First things first, take the tire off. All right, so all of this has to come off because we're doing this ball joint, we're doing the lower ball joint, and we're doing this control arm. We got to take this control arm out. So wheel spacer, caliper bracket, rotor, you got to take your tie rod off. These nuts and bolts come out. You got to undo your wheel speed sensor because you got to drop your hub. And I might take the strut tower out. I'm not for sure yet. We'll just see how it kind of goes. So yeah, let's get to pulling this thing apart. All right, now I'm just taking the caliper off. It's got two 19mm bolts. There's that bench here. And this one here. Oh. This one's a little overkill, but there we go. Slide your caliper off. I'll set it up here for now. I got little hooks I can use to keep it from hanging so it don't fall off on us, especially with the way this thing is shaking around. This whole thing's loose. Screwdriver, pads out. Make sure you don't get no grease on them or oil. If you do that, they're compromised. You can't use them. Okay. Grab a hook to hook this on. All right, I got my hook here. You can get these off Amazon for like $2. Just find a good spot for us to hang it somewhere. I want to put it on there. Maybe like that. You can just kind of hook it somewhere, just so that it won't, so it's not hanging by the hose. Just like that. You don't want it hanging by the hose, that can damage it. So you can see I'm having a pretty hard time getting this loose. Most of the time, if you're taking a brake caliper bracket off of a truck and it's the first time that it's been taken off, these really don't want to come out. I think I ended up using heat and my impact to get it loose, but I'll just kind of skip around and show you guys. So here I am, I'm just taking a little blowtorch and putting a little bit of heat around where the bolt goes in. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't need to get a big torch out to do this. Just enough heat to break loose any rust or corrosion on that bolt. And I take my impact and they come out pretty easy afterwards. All right. There's your caliper bracket. All right, so next we're gonna take this wheel spacer out. I got this like double-sided socket. It's kind of goofy, kind of hard to use, but it's all I got to fit, so. Wheel spacer's off. Now we're gonna get a rotor off of here. We got a Torx bit we need to get this screw out. Now these bits are from a master set. It's from a brand called Lexavon. I have a review on a short on my channel about these, and you can get them for like 40 bucks. And they're pretty good for the money. You get just about every one you need. And they've held up pretty good too. I've mainly used it for this stuff, like taking rotors off, but I wrenched on them pretty hard and they ain't broke yet, so. There's our rotor. I normally put these back in here just so I don't lose them, but now we're going to take off our tie rod. So you're seeing just that little nut right there. Should be able to give this a few hits. On the bottom too. Just like that. Out she comes. Just kind of inspect it, make sure it's okay. Looks good to me. Next, we're gonna take out our wheel speed sensor. So up here is where your wheel speed sensor, ABS sensor, whatever you want to call it, plugs in. I normally take them off up here. I know some guys, they'll take them out of the hub, but if you're careful with it, then it's okay. So I'll just kind of give this a little bit of a, pop this out like that. Okay, so what I did, took my screwdriver here, went in behind the plug and kind of pressed that tab out. So now I can get my hand on this red tab here, push it out all the way. And then sometimes it's easier to actually push the plug together, push in the release, and then pull, like that. Next up, we got this little thing holding the brake hose, so we're going to want to take that off. Okay, and that's off. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take the hub nut off. I got an 1 3/8" socket on my air impact. Dog's helping me. There's a washer here too, so don't lose it. Don't forget to put it back on when you put your nut back on there. All right, so now your axle should be free. You should be able to kind of push it in and out there. We're gonna take these bolts out that hold the upper control arm to your ball joint. So 13mm socket and wrench. And after you take that off, kind of pull your knuckle away and get your control arm. That's very loose. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the nut off for the lower ball joint, and I'll show you guys how to get this hub out and off of your axle at the same time. So I'm gonna get this loose. So the best way to do this is you want to try to drop the knuckle down as you pull out to get the axle out, and it can be kind of tricky. Now what you're going to want to do to get this knuckle off of the ball joint so we can take it out and press this ball joint out and take this one out, you're going to hit here and then on the other side the same spot. You might want to try to get a pry bar in here to put some pressure to get it to release. Some of them come out easy and some of them are a pain in the ass. So I want to do that now. So as I'm swinging my hammer and hitting this thing, I will add that it's a lot easier to, if you have an air hammer with a pickle fork that you can put on it, that makes this like 10 times easier, especially if it's as stuck as this one was. But I don't have an air hammer, so I normally stick to a hammer and a little bit of heat to help release the ball joint. So I actually managed to get this thing to break loose off camera. I wasn't recording when I did, but you just saw there I kind of tilted it back and down and pulled out, and it fell right out of there. So I'm going to go take it over to the bench and show you guys what to do next. So right now I'm just taking some needle nose pliers. You can see here I kind of twist them and pry against the knuckle to help get the cotter pin out. Then I just break loose the nut on the ball joint, spin it off there, and take a few swings at it with the hammer to knock it out. So right now I'm taking a chisel and kind of working my way around this ball joint to get this metal flange off. So with these stock ones, what holds these in the lower control arm is this metal flange around the outside instead of like a snap ring. So it's really important that you get all the way around this and get as much as that metal flange off as you can. It'll make pressing out the ball joint a lot easier.
Bitch.
All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm just getting ball joint press set up, getting it on there as straight as I can. I'm just getting it down hand tight. Then once I have it hand tight, I'm gonna put my impact on there and just crank it down, make sure it stays on there straight, and keep running it until it pops out. You can tell by looking here that that ball joint was shot. It was pretty bad. All right, so next I'm taking the strut tower out. You got 2 bolts here on the bottom, and then if we go up on top really quick, you can see there are 3 bolts or 3 nuts holding it on. You can take those out, and really after that it's pretty simple. You can just take a pry bar here on the bottom, put it under the strut tower, and pry up a little bit, and it'll pop loose. And you reach in there and just pull it out like so. All right, so now all we're doing here is we're taking the two bolts out that hold the upper control arm to the frame. So it's just 2 nuts, 2 bolts. And then once you get those loose, you can slide them out, and you should be able to just wiggle that control arm right out of there. It should come right out pretty easy. All right, so right now we're just pressing the ball joint in. We got our cup set up, and we're not very far off the ground, so I have to use a wrench to press this thing in, which is really hard to do. I would recommend using an impact if you can get one, but it's just a process of running your ball joint press, making sure that your ball joint is going in straight, and that all your cups and everything stay lined up so you don't damage anything. And then next you're going to want to put your grease zerk in. I always do it right after I put the ball joint in so I don't forget. Obviously you don't want to put it in before you press it in because you could damage the grease zerk. With some presses you might not if your receiver cup's big enough, but I always wait until I have the ball joint in. All right, so right now we're just putting in the new upper control arm with the bushings. These should go in pretty easy. I always wait to grease these before, or I grease them after I put them in, because if you grease them before, the grease is going to press those bushings apart, and it's going to make it more challenging to actually get back into the pocket. So You can see I just slid it in there, kind of tapped it down with my hand to get it close enough to get the bolts in. And then you just throw your nuts on. Don't forget to put those little, I don't know what you call them. I call them like cams that they pivot on. Don't forget to put those on. But right now I'm just getting it tight, not super tight, so that way when we lower the truck down, we can get it somewhat close to what it should be before we take it off to get it aligned. All right, so right now we're just putting the strut tower back in, and depending on how you go about this, it can be challenging. Right now you can see I'm kind of just getting it close, trying to get the bolts lined up to the holes that are up top in the engine bay. Something I forgot to mention earlier in the video, which actually helps taking it off and putting it in, is loosening the sway bar link, so that way you can have a little more travel on the lower control arm to get that extra room to get the bolts started. But after that, once you get that in there, you can run them in with your impact, get them tight, and tighten your sway bar link back up. All right, so moving on to the upper ball joint installation. It's pretty simple. You just slide it in there, get your nut on, tighten it down so that your hole lines up, and then you can take your cotter pin, slide it in, and bend the end so it don't come loose on you. Okay, so putting the knuckle back in can be a little tricky sometimes. What I normally do is I'll slide the bottom into the lower ball joint enough where I can get the nut started, and then I'll just kind of move it around and work until I get the axle splines started inside the wheel bearing. And then once that's in place, I can raise the knuckle back up and tighten the nut all the way and make sure that my axle is all the way in the hub. Okay, so this part's pretty straightforward. Once you have your axle slid in there, you can put your washer back on. I normally put a little bit of Loctite on there, and then you can just impact it on and get it nice and tight. You don't want that coming off. After that's done, you want to go ahead and push your steering knuckle back and push your upper control arm down. That way you can put your four bolts back in and snug them down nice and good. When you do that, make sure that the ball joint, that recess, snaps into the bottom of the upper control arm. So the ball joint on this tie rod was spinning. So what I did was I took a pry bar and pressed down, applied some pressure, and that was enough to keep it from spinning. So I was able to put my impact on and tighten it down. So we're kind of in the final stretch of this repair. Really, all that's left is the basic things. You know, you want to put your rotor back on. Make sure you put your retaining screw in and tighten that down good. When I'm doing brakes, I just put this on. It's called Seal Glide. It's like a brake lubricant. In my opinion, it's better than grease. But anytime I do brakes, or in this case, I'm putting the brake pads back on, so I'm going to apply a little bit of this stuff just to help keep the brake noise down. All right, man. Now all that's really left is you're going to put your brake pads back on, put your caliper back on, tighten down your caliper bolts, and throw your wheel on. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope this video was able to help you in some way or the other. This really isn't a really super hard job to do, but I mean, if you're somebody who doesn't really work on cars a lot, or is trying to save themselves some money from taking their truck or car to a dealership, then you know, I think this is good. I think it's good to work on your own vehicle, especially because you know, you trust yourself probably a lot more than you trust somebody you don't know working on your car. So again, I hope this was valuable. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.